Hey folks, in this video we're going to go over what data comes back in a real-time eligibility check response. We'll start by going over the data that payers typically do return. Next we'll go over a few data points that payers sometimes do return. And finally we'll go over a few things that payers never return. As we go through these three topics, we'll look at response data as it's presented in the Stedi UI, as well as how it's presented in the actual JSON response from a direct API call, so that you can get a feel for how to navigate response data in both of these environments. Let's get started. Starting off here in the Stedi UI, I'm going to go ahead and click on this mock eligibility check and navigate over to the raw response tab. This tab shows me Stedi's JSON translation of the payer's raw response for this particular eligibility check. All the JSON responses you get back from Stedi are completely lossless translations of that raw data that the payer sends back to us. We never drop, concatenate, or otherwise alter the data that we get back from payers before we present it to you as JSON. Now, the bulk of the members' benefit data can be found in the benefits information array, which we can see begins down here. Each object in the benefits information array gives us data about a specific benefit for the member per their plan. But what exactly are those benefits? Well, if we click into this benefits tab, we can actually see a UI representation of each of them. So let's use this tab to take a closer look at this member's benefits as returned by the payer. Now at the top of this page, we can see a table related to service type code 30. So that's STC30, which is the service type code for general health plan benefits. The table contains information on a few different benefit types related to STC30 according to this member's plan. We can see these listed on the left. So we could start off with statuses here. This is basically just giving us an indication of active or inactive coverage for this member for this particular service type code. So we see active coverage here. Next, we have some patient responsibility data. So we see coinsurance, deductible, and out-of-pocket maximums, as well as copayment information. You'd also expect to see coinsurance here if it was applicable for this member's plan. You can typically expect to receive these patient responsibility data points in eligibility responses. Now, when it comes to benefit types like deductible, it's worth noting that you'll typically also get back accumulator data. So for example, let's tab over to this JSON response. And if we take a look here, starting on line 1705 in the response, we can see that this member's calendar year deductible for service type code 30 is $250. Now, if I scroll a bit further down in this response, we'll see another object. This object tells me that the deductible for service type code 30 for this member is $0, but we're looking at the remaining deductible here. So it's $0 remaining deductible. So based on these two objects, we can ascertain that as of today, this member has paid their full $250 towards their deductible for service type code 30. As you've probably guessed by now, each of the patient responsibility amounts that we were looking at in this table, so this $25 copay amount, for example, is derived from its own benefits information object in the response. So if we go over to this raw response again, and we look at the copay amount of $25, we can see that it is in this benefits information object, $25 for service type code 30. It's important to keep in mind that the precise data you get back in eligibility responses can vary by payer, as well as per the given member's particular plan with that payer. So to give you an example, let's filter down this member's benefits data to specifically service type code 35, that's for dental care. And if we take a look here, we can see that the only benefit type returned by the payer here is a benefit description. If we take a closer look at the description, we can see why that's the case. It looks like general dentistry is not covered by the payer per this plan. So it makes sense that no other patient responsibility data was returned here for STC 35. On the subject of these benefit descriptions, it's worth noting that they're also sometimes used by payers to distinguish between seemingly identical benefits. Let's take a look at this JSON response for an example. So if I go all the way to the top of this JSON response and I go to my first couple of benefits information objects, here they are, we'll see that the very first one is a coinsurance a value for STC5, which is diagnostic labs. That coinsurance value is 0%. But the second object seems to tell me the exact same thing. So why are we getting two of the same objects for this particular benefit? The answer lies in this description field, the benefits description. So we can see that in this case, this first object is telling us that the benefit specifically applies for gestational diabetes labs, whereas the second object is telling us that the benefit applies to adult routine, general, and convenience care labs. Let's go over a few other pieces of data that typically come back in eligibility responses. I'll kind of go rapid fire through these for the sake of time. So frequency limitations. An example of these would be visit limitations or an upper age limit, a lower age limit. Those will indeed come back in your benefits information array. Here's an example. We see a 30 visit limitation for STC 33 and a 100 visit limitation for STC AG. You'll also get back plan type. So when I say plan type, I mean like PPO or HMO, etc. That'll usually come back in the benefits information.insurance type field. We can see what that looks like here. So here we have a PPO plan. Payers will also sometimes return their internal plan name in the plan coverage field. So we can see that Humana internally refers to this plan as Humana Gold Plan. You'll get back in and out of network indications for each benefit. So for example, if I look at this particular benefits information object, we can see that the coinsurance amount for STC 49 is 0%. And we can see that this is specific to in-network providers. That's why we see yes here. We could imagine that we would see a similar object lower down in the response for the same service type code, but the coinsurance amount might be greater than 0 for out-of-network providers, in which case this would say no. You'll get back prior auth requirements as well for each service type. So if I look up auth here, you'll see an auth or cert indicator set to no for diagnostic labs. So we know that prior auth is not required for gestational diabetes labs. And finally, we can talk about benefits related entities. So if I go back into my UI here and I go over to this check, looking at this overview tab, we can see that there's a few of these benefits related entities here. So we see Medicare, for example. So let's go ahead and find this in our JSON response. I'll look up the term Medicare. Here it is. We can see that this benefits information object is telling me that there is a related entity involved, benefits related entities, and that related entity is Medicare. Medicare is a payer, and they apply specifically to the service type code 30 benefits for this member, so the general medical benefits. So what's basically happening here is this particular payer that we sent the check to, that payer being United Healthcare Dental, they're telling us that for non-dental benefits, for general medical benefits, aka STC 30, this payer has Medicare coverage. A couple of other examples of where benefits related entities come in handy. Let's say you send a check straight to Medicare. If the member has a Medicare Advantage plan, then the payer who administers that MA plan will often be returned in benefits related entities. Another example would be, let's say you send a check to a state Medicaid payer, and that member's benefits are administered by an MCO, a managed care organization. The name of the MCO might be returned in benefits related entities. Now let's talk about a few data points that sometimes come back in eligibility responses. Two come to mind that are very commonly asked about. The first is service history. So like, what is the last time that a member went to a specialist for a given service type? This is mostly seen in responses from dental plans, although there are some medical plans that in some scenarios will return the last date that a given service was performed. That can come back in eligibility responses. Another example would be referral requirements. We can see an example of that here in this raw response, where the very first benefits information object tells me that this member requires a referral from their PCP in order to see a specialist. Again, this will come back in the benefit description field for a given benefits information object. And let's wrap this video up with a couple of commonly asked about items that are not returned by payers in eligibility check responses. Those would be a given provider's network status. So as we went over earlier, you will get back a member's in and out of network benefits per their plan. What you will not get back is a provider's network status. So for example, in this request, I had sent this provider's information to United Healthcare. United Healthcare is not going to tell me whether this provider is in or out of network with them. Again, I'm only going to find out the members in and out of network benefits according to their United Healthcare plan. And finally, prior auth status and/or notes. So again, we went over earlier, you can find out prior auth requirements for a given service type. However, you cannot find out, for example, any existing notes left by the payer on a current prior auth request that's on file, or the current prior auth status for a given prior auth request. All right, that's going to wrap up this video. Today, we covered the data that you can expect to receive in real-time eligibility check responses, what typically comes back, what sometimes comes back, and what never comes back. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.